from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Mixed messages coming from the White House. Good morning, Amy Jacobson here. Chris Kroc in for Dan Proft this week. And Elon Musk said he wants a new free trade agreement with Europe to eliminate tariffs on both sides. That sounds reasonable, right?
I hope it is agreed that both Europe and the United States should move, ideally, in my view, to a zero tariff situation, effectively creating a free trade zone between Europe and North America.
But here's the deal. Whoa, says White House senior counsel and trade advisor Peter Navarro. He says this is not negotiable and this is not what the tariffs are about.
This is not a negotiation. This is a national emergency based on a trade deficit that's gotten out of control because of cheating. We're always willing to listen. Don't say you want to lower their tariffs and be done with it. It's the non-tariff cheating. Stop manipulating your currency. Stop dumping stuff in.
So this morning, while the stock market is dropping again, the White House really has to get their communications in order. I mean, is this about bringing in $100 billion in tariff revenue or negotiating ploy to bring tariffs down to zero? That is the question. And with that, let's welcome back to the program Richard Porter, former national committeeman to the RNC from Illinois, and he authored an article at realclearpolitics.com, Trump's multi-pronged tariff strategy. So which one is it, Richard? Is this a negotiation ploy to bring tariffs down to zero, or is this bringing in billions of dollars of tariff revenue?
Well, I think it's both. And I think it depends on the sector that you're talking about. But I think that there is a pragmatism to this and a theoretical inconsistency, but sometimes that's what pragmatism is recognizing that there are certain industries that you're going to want to protect, like steel and perhaps autos, and certainly computer chips that have a strategic importance to them. And then there are, kind of general industry where I think moving towards a zero tariff environment is the goal of the administration. So I think they want to do both.
Now, in your article, you talked about an October speech that you gave at the Chicago Economic Club that reiterated what Trump was saying, that tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. Do you still stand by that?
Well, that was actually the president.
Oh,
and
okay.
It was a great speech. I don't know. It was he was being interviewed by someone from, I think it was Bloomberg, and he was taunting him, because, of course, look, I'm a University of Chicago grad, and and I studied law and economics there. And look, from a theoretical point of view, you want less friction and lower taxes, and tariffs create friction, and they are a tax. They're a tax on the foreign supplier of goods, and then there's some dispute about whether it's passed through to consumers or not. But there's no question that part of what the president is looking for here is some protection for American workers. I mean, we have to recognize that what happened is we imposed our theories of free trade, which are correct, that they had an impact on the American middle class, folks that were working in high-wage jobs in manufacturing. They were impacted not just by low-wage workers in other countries, but also by high-wage workers in countries like Germany that had lots of trade barriers. For example, you find almost no American cars in Germany. That's because of the trade barriers that they have. Now, a lot of this goes back to the post-war construct that we set up, where we were trying to help Europe to rebuild. And so we did so explicitly with the Marshall Plan, where we were funding some of the reconstruction directly with U.S. dollars. We also did so implicitly and indirectly by allowing Europe to maintain some trade barriers that protected their recovering industries, while we lowered those same trade barriers on our industries. And so we gave them a leg up in the trade game. And that's gone on for 60 years, 70 years. And so President Trump is saying that construct has to come to an end. We're past Reconstruction. We're now in a world where we should all be competing on a level playing field along these kind of basic industries.
Well, why didn't Trump tackle this issue his first time in office? Why do you think he
Well,
waited till his second term?
He did in some. I mean, for example, his steel tariffs really helped the steel industry recover. It's one of the reasons why I look in Illinois, downstate Illinois, really swung from being a mixed Republican-Democrat environment to being a solid Republican environment, because his steel tariffs had a real impact. It opened up a couple of steel plants down the southern part of Illinois and put a lot of people to work back in high-wage jobs. And so, the steel workers of America saw this. The auto workers saw this. This is one of the reasons why there's been such a tectonic shift where the working Americans are the party, we're the party of the working Americans, the Republicans, because President Trump has gone to bat for folks in a way that no one else has for 60 years.
So, Richard, it's Chris. I love the column you had in Real Clear Politics today that Amy is referencing. You say the first Trump deploys, then pulls back the high tariffs. He's doing, I don't say a rope-a-dope, but he's messing with them to shock them to, number one, well, I won't do the numbers because that's what you do in your piece, but one of the things he's doing is taking these relationships we've had with our allies for decades and decades and decades, going back for some time, and he's saying, no more are we buying your friendship and influence. If you're our allies, we're setting everything straight. We're not getting ripped off anymore. And I think that's brilliant what you're saying. But also, he's rattling the cages and doing this to shake everything, to get people to come to the table. And, I mean, you look at George W. Bush, one of his top economic advisors was interviewed the other day. And he says that he sees within a few months this will be, a lot of these ones will be settled by the end of the year. 6 months, last 6 months of the year, a lot of this will be settled too. I don't have any discomfort in this, and it's meant to be uncomfortable and shake the whole system to rebuild it. It sounds like you would agree with that.
Yeah, look, it is uncomfortable. I'm not excited about seeing the stock market fall, but that's part of the transition. The stock market values things not just on what cash flows are, but on the certainty of the cash flows. And so what's happened is that Donald Trump, by changing the environment in which businesses will be operating, is creating some uncertainty for the businesses. They have to rethink and think about their supply chain and maybe rebuild in the United States. And so this round of tariffs and protectionism is fundamentally different than kind of the theoretical, 19th century assessment of tariffs, because a lot of what he's doing is trying to get into the heads of the CEOs of multinationals who can make decisions about where they locate their production. So you think about John Deere and some of the auto companies during the campaign, where the president was speaking directly to them and saying, look, you need to build to John Deere. You got to rebuild in the Quad Cities. If you're going to build something in Mexico, you're going to have a problem with me. And so it isn't just kind of protecting 1,000 small furniture makers or something like that, or pin makers, what Adam Smith might talk about that. Instead, it's almost a personal conversation with the CEOs of the Fortune 1000 and saying, when you're deciding where to locate your business, you need to recognize that you are an American business first. And so you got to take care of your neighbors. You can't just operate on the basis of lowest cost and what's the best, for your bottom line. You need to incorporate into your thinking the impact what you're doing is having on American workers. So this is an overlay of pragmatism on top of theory. Theories don't put their kids to bed at night.
Right.
And a lot of what he's doing is saying, yes, that's true, but we have to also think about our fellow Americans. We have to think about our defense posture. We can't be in a situation where, we don't have a gunpowder plant in America. We don't have the steel capacity in order to, to supply our own needs in the event of some kind of a crisis with China. None of our pharmaceuticals are made here. We've gotten ourselves into a situation where, yes, theoretically, it's a good thing to spread cost to the lowest cost producer. But the problem is that might leave you vulnerable to a situation where you have a hostile power that tries to lever that situation against you. So we still have a lot of power, a lot of economic power, and the president is levering that to the benefit of all Americans. It's uncomfortable.
Right. No, it is uncomfortable, and it's painful in the process. And I made the mistake of looking at my 401k, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And it's not getting any better. But resetting global trade and getting corporations to move plants back to America, to employ Americans, that could take years. And we have a midterm election, that's going to start in earnest in 1 year from now.
Yeah, but I think, look, in Trump time, things happen faster, right? He's just this is what is also unsettling to a lot of Americans who are protesting really good things about how he's remaking the government. And I think that's the same thing here. He isn't just doing this sort of on a one-off basis, right? He's not kind of ticking down the list of suppliers and spending a year negotiating with them. He has whacked the entire world and said, we're open. If you want to call us up, in the meantime, we're going to start collecting these significant tariffs from you. And as a result of that, I think, as you mentioned, Amy, in the lead-in, 50 countries have already come and said, let's talk. So Trump time moves faster than ordinary time, He's making the government do stuff at a faster pace. And it goes back, this is one of his strengths, Think about Donald Trump in the 1980s when he saw how long it was taking everybody to fix the Central Park ice skating rink. And he got it done in like 6 months. It's been a project been going on for years. Think about the IRS modernization or the FAA modernization. The government languishes and takes everything. One of the Doge things is that Treasury's been working on this project for 30 years, a 5-year project, and they're still 5 years away.
Right.
This is the problem with government. And so I think that Trump, his whole goal, like with Doge, is that by the time we have our 250th birthday, I can't say quintessential, whatever it is,
right.
In July 4th of next year, he wants to be done. And then he wants to enter that fall campaign season saying, look at all that I've done. So yes, there is in private equity and investing world a thing called the J curve, where when you take over a business and you implement a new strategy, sometimes it has a negative impact on the value of the business out of the box. But the whole goal is to come out of that J curve and onto a stronger growth projection. So I think that's what the president is trying to do. We're taking a step back. Yes, that's happening. You can see it in the markets today. That's because we're resetting relationships in the terms of trade. Businesses have to rethink what their supply chain is going to be. They have to think about how am I going to hire these people and train them. So there's a lot going on, and he's driving that change, and he's driving it at a very fast pace. So I'm not convinced that the midterm elections are going to be a problem. I think at the moment, if we had an election right now, it would be, we saw in Wisconsin. That there's turmoil. I think by the 4th of July of next year, he'll be done with this, and then he's going to be kind of coming in and saying, look at all that I did.
Richard, you also have a Daily Mail poll that came out today saying that Trump went up 4 points from his last poll they recently did to 53% approval with the tariffs already begun in that polling thing. I wanted to also hit on this. Just a little earlier this morning, EU's von der Leyen says, quote, we are ready to negotiate with the U.S. on tariffs. We see other allies doing that, Vietnam, Taiwan, etc. And then look at this, too, and twofold. Number one, I want to mention and ask I think that a lot of our allies are and will be coming to the table very shortly. And on the flip side, China, this morning, their market seems to be imploding. Quote, China's stock market has the biggest single-day crash since 2008. Quote, over 2,000 mainland-listed companies have hit limit down in China, and China's most active CSI 1000 stock index futures is now down 10%, hitting limit down. And, of course, you can explain what that means probably better than I can, hitting limit down.
We put in these circuit breakers, so-called circuit breakers, years ago in the wake of a couple of the crashes. And so the idea there is to give people a chance to breathe, because sometimes there's panic selling, and that arises when people have leverage on their stock. We have limits on how much money you can borrow against your stock in the United States to try to impact that. And we also have circuit breakers, too. But, China's, their market isn't quite as mature as ours, and I do think that they have a little more leverage in their marketplace. And look, we're a major trading partner for them. And so it's, we still have a big stick. China has a lot of leverage on us, but we have a lot of leverage on them. And this is where the president going out to play golf this weekend in the face of a 10% downdraft in our market was really kind of a brilliant bidding move. And what it was if you're bluffing someone, and I'm not saying it's a bluff, but I just think you want to convey cool and calm in the face of kind of market turmoil to show I'm not troubled by the short-term disruption, by what's happening. I'm playing for the long-term game. I'm not blinking. And so conveying that message to China, I think, is very important. China responds to strength, as do other nations. And so what Donald Trump always does is convey that sort of determination and strength. And that's what's more likely to get people to the table. And then I think we'll find out what the real bottom line is. I think the president does have in mind He wants to raise revenue from the transactions, from the sales, from the imports of these foreign products, as well as lower tariffs. He wants to do both. And so, we're going to find out where his real bottom line is going to be on tariffs going forward. They're going to be significantly lower, I think, than what he announced on Tuesday of last week or Wednesday of last week. But I don't think they're going to go directly to zero. I think he is looking to raise hundreds of billions of dollars through tariffs and thereby kind of reducing the pressure on the income tax, making it easier to lower the income taxes, to take taxes on tips away, for example, and to eliminate taxes for people making $150K or less. So I think that there's sort of a multi-pronged aspect to what he's trying to get done. And, as usual, he's kind of showing he's the master of the deal.
Yep, the art of the deal, that's for sure.
The art of the
just
deal.
wanted to switch gears real quick because we have this little thing called a gubernatorial race in 2026. It's 2025 already. Who's running besides the sheriff from DuPage County for governor?
We don't know yet. I'm looking at it. I think some other folks are still looking at it. And look, I think we could have a real opportunity in Illinois. The question is, when have the people of Illinois had enough? I mean, Chris, you're from Big D now, but Illinois.
No, I've seen my home state crumble year after year. Sell its soul for gambling, weed, and they're still broke. And the tollway was supposed to stop collecting decades ago is still collecting. It's all a disgrace. The pensions they can't afford. None of this crap.
No, look, the government is run for the benefit of the people in the government. We're all supposed to serve them instead of the other way around.
Right.
It's everything in Illinois is backwards. And the question is when will the people of Illinois be ready for something different, something normal? And I think, I think we could be on the verge of that. Our results in the elections, the local elections last Tuesday were depressing.
Yes.
But I think a lot of that is because of mechanical functions. J.B. Pritzker invested millions upon millions of dollars getting the low propensity voter, the periodic voter, signed up for permanent vote by mail. So they have a built-in turnout machine. They're able to get their voters out to the polls at a much lower cost and with much higher frequency than we are. And so the only way we're going to be competitive in this state is to invest money in those kind of projects. We've been against vote by mail, and there's a lot of problems with vote by mail. But the bottom line is it makes it easier for your voters to vote. And we used to, you go back 15 years, we did used to take advantage of the absentee ballot before it became kind of a wide open system the way they've done it and recoiled from that. But we need to take advantage of the rules as they are. We got to invest millions of dollars getting the low propensity voters signed up for permanent vote by mail. So our voters it's as easy for our voters to vote as it is for their voters. That's how we're going to be competitive. Chris, Illinois is closer to turning red than Texas is to turning blue.
Really?
The maximum, that they max out at 54.5%. That is their maximum vote total. With the worst possible candidate and the worst environment for Republicans, they're going to get 54.5%. So that is our stretch. We're not California or New York. They're in the 60 percentiles, right? We need to take care of these kind of basic blocking and tallying, and we have to produce, the people are with us on our ideas. We need candidates that people find attractive. So, look, that's going to be the game. We can win this. We can turn this state around. We have a lot of natural advantages. It's just a question of us making it happen.
What about Governor Richard Porter?
Well, like I said, I'm looking at it, but you're going to need to raise a whole lot of money. So
it's always about money.
I think, and so that's going to be. I've been feeling out some folks and seeing how much they're willing to invest. Because, we do need to put money into the ground. And that's the only way we're going to be able to reap the corn in the future is putting money into these projects. And that's going to take folks, opening their wallets and it's going to take tens of millions of dollars. And a lot of the folks that used to give us this money have moved away.
Right.
So we got to find some new donors and maybe get some donors from outside the state to help investing in this too. But look, I think Illinois has got a lot of prospects. I'm sort of excited about the idea of turning the state around and, we'll see.
All right. Richard Porter, going to have to leave it there for today. Former national committeeman to the RNC from Illinois. And you can read his article at realclearpolitics.com. And Richard Porter joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Do you remember when you were a kid and you fantasized that your bicycle was a motorcycle? Maybe you even put baseball cards in the spokes to make it sound like a motorcycle. But it